Hi, everybody. This is Erin Baker with Baker Street Student Success, and this is a re-recording of today's live webinar of how to overcome overwhelm and paralysis because the sound was doing something pretty funky going on there. So here is the recording for you all, and I hope you enjoy. All right, so starting off with anxiety, like I really like this quote about overwhelm, because for me, overwhelm really shows up as anxiety. What does overwhelm show up like for you? So this quote talks about how anxiety is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you very far, right? So, I mean, you have so much going on, you don't know what to do. You can't get anywhere. You can't make any progress. And this really focuses on what I'd like to talk about today about how to overcome this overwhelm is that you can't do everything, but you can do anything one thing at a time. And if you know me, you might chuckle a little because I have a little bit of difficulty with this myself. I frequently get overwhelmed and paralyzed. And then this last one is about really breaking it down to its nuts and bones, right? Nuts and bolts. Is in a busy and overwhelming world, let's do simplicity. Keep it simple, sweetheart. Right? It's really about simplicity. It's really about doing one thing at a time. So let's break that down into exactly what that is, because all of this is great information, right? That's great advice. Awesome sauce. Thank you. What do I do with that? What does that exactly look like? All right, so let's take a look here. So the very first part of this is about acceptance. You can spend an awful lot of time, and if you're anything like me, you can spend ridiculous amounts of time fighting, kicking and screaming the fact that you're overwhelmed and that you're paralyzed and that this, you don't like it shouldn't be happening, and you put a whole bunch of pressure on yourself and say like, oh my god, just get it together, just do what you need to do, and just, all of these things. And it's like, if we thought about like how we would speak to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old who's overwhelmed and they're just paralyzed, right? With anxiety, you're not going to put that kind of pressure on them. You're not going to tell them that they just need to get over it. So don't do that to yourself. I know that we like to feel like, well, we should know better. We should be able to do better. We should. We keep shoulding on ourselves, right? Is one of my favorite phrases. And it's just not helpful. And if you actually want to overcome your paralysis, you need to accept that it happens and that it is happening. It's something that is very similar to me as I age, of accepting the limitations of my body. And I get really angry, I get really mad, and I just fight, I just rail against the idea of like, I used to be able to do this. I could do, And my mom used to use the phrase of you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. And it's a very similar thing. It's like, I'm adding all of this pressure to me. It's not getting me anywhere, but it's, it's valid. It's there. It's a response. And just like that rocking chair that we talked about anxiety, about it gives you a lot to do, but it doesn't get you very far. It's the same thing here. Before you can start to overcome overwhelm and paralysis, you have to work on accepting it. And then right into that very next step is self-care and compassion. Now, I know that we hear a lot about this, and some people make it seem so easy of like, oh yeah, just take care of yourself. Oh, okay. What does that even mean? Right. And I have autism, and I also was, as I grew up, I just kind of thought that like having needs and taking care of myself was selfish. And so somehow as an adult, I thought that having needs and taking care of myself was selfish. And so when people are like, you need to focus on self-care, I'm like, no, what I need to do is focus on other people. I need to help other people. I need to do these things for other people because that's just a core part of who I am. And if you're like me, the only way that I was able to really think about self-care was to think about the idea that if I am keeled over or I'm spent or I'm just wiped out because I haven't taken care of myself, I'm not able to take care of anyone else either. So for me, when I say you need to focus on your self-care, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I need to focus on self-care so that I can care for other people, so that I can do for other people. So if that's what you need to do, if you're like me and you think it's selfish to take care of yourself and to have needs and to address those needs, then think about how you're hurting other people by not helping yourself. Once you've started taking those steps, right? Like taking care of your sleep hygiene, taking care of eating healthy, taking care of moving, taking care of water intake, all of these things that our bodies need to do. That's how they were built. They have to do those things. Otherwise, they don't function at all sometimes. And if they do function, they're not functioning very well. So, taking care of those things, those basic functions, then journaling. Now, okay, first of all, sometimes I have difficulty thinking of journaling because it's like, okay, like, blah. That's that thing that I used to do when I was 13 years old. I don't even know. Yeah, I did it. I did do it as 13. Like at first, I wasn't sure if I had actually done that when I was 13, but yeah, no, I totally did. I used to write all the time. And sometimes now as an adult, a tad older than the age of 13 now, um, sometimes it's really helpful to get in that silly mindset of, like the 13-year-old writing in their journal or writing in their diary, right? Is like a conversation with yourself. And sometimes, again, when I'm struggling with acceptance and thinking that it's silly or stupid or whatever like that, I will totally go to the Dear Diary, today was just ridiculous, and I'll intentionally play into it because what it does is it allows my brain permission. It gives permission to just go through it. And because my brain isn't focused on all of the pressure and all of the I have to's and everything else like that, it can just free flow. And that's the importance of this journal, is that it should be free writing. No judgment about the format, the length, the prose, the anything, right? Just totally, you can jump around, incomplete sentences, everything. Let your mind just throw everything out, okay? Once you do that, you're going to turn that into a bit of a brain dump where you start to bullet point things. And this, with your brain dump, might be like your to-dos, your wants, your wishes, your tasks, your things that you keep forgetting about, or things that you want to make sure happen, or things like that, right? Once you get your brain dump out, and this is, any area of your life, every area of your life, because part of the overwhelm is because there's so much in your head and you're trying to keep it in your head. Your brain is too busy. You have to slow your brain down and make some space. Part of how you do that is with the journaling and then the brain dump. You got to get it all out of your head. Okay. Once you've established the brain dump, then you're going to start by categorizing. And it's whatever categories make sense to you. Some examples might be like related to work, related to school, cleaning the house, education, self-development, savings, money management, those kinds of things. Social, personal development, whatever categories make sense to you. And what is really helpful is if you set a time limit for yourself. Really good time limit is 25 minutes. And if you know me, you might be laughing your butt off right now because I'm horrible at this. And I have to write it down everywhere and keep reminding myself. And I even set timers on my watch of like, okay, you're going to get up and you're going to move in 25 minutes because our bodies need to move. They need to get that function in. It's a hydraulic machine, right? And that movement is what helps us with that. So at least get up and stretch every 25 minutes. Then you're going to use the Eisenhower matrix to prioritize. Now, if you've never heard of the Eisenhower matrix, this is one of the most amazing things I've ever heard of in my life. And what it does is it allows you to prioritize into urgent and important, urgent but not important, important but not urgent, not important and not urgent. Okay, so that's where you start to prioritize those things. Once you prioritize them, then you're going to make a plan. So things that you've determined are important and urgent, urgent meaning need to happen within the next 24 to 72 hours. You plan those right away. Put them in your planner, put them in your calendar app on your phone, anything else like that right away. Do it right now. Okay, if there's anything that you need to do leading up to that, then plan those steps in there too. Put it down and get it done. Okay. Then the other things that are important but not urgent, you can plan ahead, like 2 weeks to 3 months. You can put those things in there. Things that end up in the quadrant that are urgent but not important, you can kind of decide, is that something that you can delegate to someone else? Is that something that you really need to be doing? Or is that something that you can put in the parking lot for something you want to do in the future, or think about, or develop? And then things that end up in the last quadrant, which is not important and not urgent, these are time wasters. These are things you really want to think about of, are they helping in some way? If not, get rid of them. Now, I'm going to be honest. Sometimes a brain break for something that's not important and not urgent is really good. And we need to make sure we limit those. We need to make sure that we time those so that we're not spending a tremendous amount of time on those time wasters. Okay. Once you've made this plan, you really need to focus on eliminating distractions. So for a lot of us, that's going to be our phone, putting it on silent or airplane mode, or even putting it 6 feet away, really focusing just for 25 minutes at a time, right? Making sure we get up every 25 minutes and do that movement because our body's a hydraulic machine. So we got to get that movement in there, right? And then you can return to the task or move on to the next task. The other part of eliminating distractions, if you're on a computer, is maybe just focus on one tab. If you've met me before, you know that I usually have like 87 tabs open at the same time, and I'm very protective of my tabs. Don't talk to me about my tabs. But when I am doing focused work, I focus on one tab at a time, and that leads us to the final thing, which is focus on one thing, one, not 12, until it's done. Now, in this case, when we say done, maybe that's the end of 25 minutes. Maybe that's the end of this particular focus time. And things may come up as you're doing this, right? Especially as you start to get in the habit of it and you start to train your brain to be able to do that. Then you want to keep something next to you so you can write things down and you don't forget them. Okay. And you work with your brain to be okay with, okay, that thought entered and I'm going to let it go. And again, if you need to remember it, then you can write it down right next to you and then let it go because you have put it down on paper and you can continue with the task that you're doing at the time. So these have been ridiculously helpful for me, and these are incredibly helpful for you to do too. If you would like the how-to guide on this as well as the Eisenhower matrix, go ahead and comment overcome down below, and then I'll go ahead and shoot that information over to you. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you join our Facebook group. It's called Coaching Students to Their Best Learning Potential. And you can turn frustration into success right now with both yourself as well as if you have a student around. And lastly, get our newsletter with tips and resources like these every week. We'll be back here again next week, Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you so much, and drop me a message.